Thank you for staying with us. You are watching Nigeria Decides, and we are reviewing the gubernatorial and supplementary elections, especially with 4 state results announced as inconclusive. And we have joining us this evening Mayowa Idowu, who's a journalist, and Ugo Ikiako, who's a public analyst. Gentlemen, it's good to have you join us in the studio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, definitely. So let's start with the elections that are held on Saturday. In your assessment, how would you rate it? We know voter apathy was the language of the day. We understand we had some skirmishes here and there with violence breaking out and a whole lot more. But how would you have rated the elections on Saturday?
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give them 2 over 10.
Wow.
Like the idea, you see, a lot of people don't get it. All right, Nigerian democracy is taking a serious beating, and the electoral process is a key part of our democratic culture here in Nigeria. I look at what has happened during this election. The presidential election didn't go too well for a lot of people, and I voted on Saturday, like 2 days ago. 2 days ago, yeah. But you know the funny thing that happened on the day of the presidential election, I went in there. Like I said, I was on the queue for like an hour plus before I could register myself, and before the whole processing, verification, everything, vetting for me to go in. But on Saturday, I left my house 12:30. I got, because I had to work, the walking distance not far. I got to the polling booth like 25 minutes walk. I didn't spend 30 seconds on the queue. There was virtually nobody there. I just went in. It was so, at the end of the day, so why people were not excited for the governorship election. So when people look at this thing, what happened over the last few days is shameful, to say the least. And I don't think this INEC understands it. So,
Mayowa, would you say that this governorship election was one that was supposed to have been closer to home, as so many people have described it, yet we saw a very poor turnout?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's something, because obviously the governor of where you are, you have a direct relationship with him. But I think what we've seen is people are very obsessed with the presidential. So I think with the way the presidential worked, if you compare it to something like in 2015, where the incumbent was voted out, I think there was a bit more optimism. People felt re-energized going into the following elections. But now, I think because of the way this one turned out, I think a lot of people were very dispirited, because we saw a lot of the malpractice that happened, and you know, it fed into the idea, oh, my vote doesn't count. So it's like, why do I go out and bother to actually go and vote?
Okay, now let's also talk about some level of surprises and upsets in this governorship election. We should be looking at the likes of Oyo and Kwara State as well. Did you expect that twist of fate?
well, for Oyo State, I'm not surprised. Right. So when we do analysis as a political analyst, you need to consider some factors going into an election. All right. Oyo State, from Ogbomosho down to Ibadan, you have different power key players within that space. But the thing that happened in Oyo State, that the people voted out bad governance. For example, we're talking about Lautech. Students of Lautech were home for more than a year. That's number one. The constituted authority, that was what he called himself. That's the governor that was voted out. Couldn't pay pensioners. He couldn't pay civil servants. And the worst of it all, he destroyed Yinka Elefe's building. Yinka is someone that for we all know, he has his challenges, but he has done something enough that he has a radio station standing and employ indigenous of Oyo State, and you went ahead to destroy without in disregard of a court injunction. So for me, he lost the Senate. He's a candidate, did not win for a governorship election. If there's a way they can find a way to penalize him and send the FCC to come and take him and make sure that all the books of Oyo State
that's becoming a bit too personal.
No, it's not personal, because at the end of the day, people shouldn't be surprised if there's any case of financial misappropriation under his regime. I think that is fair, because to an extent, you were a governor for how many years? You couldn't pay salary. What are you doing with the money? So he has questions to answer, and I hope he answers those questions. And I wish him well.
Following from what he said, I think another thing you have to look at is the history. Oyo is traditionally volatile, and before Ajimobi, no governor since post-99 had actually done 2 terms. So it's not that surprising that, it swung back to the PDP.
Okay, let's look at the issues on the day of elections. You mentioned one. People didn't really show up.
Yeah.
But we didn't see as much ballot box snatching in this part of the country as compared to the South. we heard mostly in Rivers and in some parts of Akwa Ibom. But aside from those places, we really didn't. I mean, in Lagos, people just came out, voted, and went back home. We also didn't see people trying to say, "Oh, I'm going to wait and protect my vote." We didn't see all of that. The violence we heard majorly came from one state.
Well, the truth is that the presidential election was quite different from the governorship election. For example, we all know that before the election proper, a lot of people know that Babajide Sanwo-Olu that was elected a few days ago, it was like the governor in waiting. That was a lot of people had that in mind. Reason being the fact that some felt that PDP haven't done enough, some felt that Jimmy Abaje didn't campaign enough, and all these sentiments are valid, and that is true. But the truth about it is that the presidential election had more attention, had more drive for people going into it, and at the end of the day, because in Lagos is a cosmopolitan state. All right, so diverse people from diverse ethnic groups all the way here. So some people that were not happy, maybe from Benue, from the southeast, were not happy with what Buhari has done over the last 4 years. Okay, I'm going to go out to vote for him. But if you've been in Lagos and you feel that, okay, I'm sympathetic to the APC, there's no need taking them out. Let me still vote for them. But with regards to what happened in Akwa Ibom and River State, I think it's sad. I said it the last time I was here. It has a lot to do with the political culture of the leaders in the place. For example, we saw what happened in Kwara State, all right? It's true that Saraki lost. It seems that the Saraki dynasty has collapsed. But also, we should try as much as possible to praise people that understand to an extent their democratic culture. People that go all out to say, okay, election is not everything about democracy. Former President Goodluck Jonathan did it in 2015. When he lost, he said does not amount to somebody shedding his blood and the rest of them. But look at what happened in Kwara State. Saraki lost his Senate seat, the governorship election, and the State House of Assembly. He didn't say anything. He didn't incite his people. He didn't incite his supporters to go all out to destroy. He didn't use the towns or anybody or the police or anybody that was loyal to him to do any sort of injustice to the people. But compare that to what's happening in River State and in Akwa Ibom. So it shows you the distinction between the characters of the leaders at play. So for me, I think that Rotimi Amechi and Godswill Akpabio, we just have to call out their names. They've done things that, for me, I think is to your own people. There's some things they shouldn't do, and also you need to understand that there's a sentiment in the southwest. Akwa Ibom is predominantly a PDP state for now. The same thing with River State. So you can, no matter how you try to muzzle the people out of the way, it's going to be difficult for you to achieve that, despite all the military might and all the federal might you might have. For yourself. Okay,
now still talking about some of the things that happened. Just a few hours ago, we heard reports of an electoral officer in Imo State being arrested, and INEC actually said, well, take this individual and then go over for interrogation. Now, Imo State and how the stories have kept on developing and unfolding, one cannot necessarily predict, despite we already know one of the candidates is having a clear lead so far. But what new do you think might unfold in the next couple of hours as we're waiting for the final results of Imo State?
You know, it's been Imo, because this is something that's also blown over from the last election, where you're hearing things are just happening so quickly, you actually don't have an idea.
We've had updates back to back,
so
almost
it's like a never-ending movie. You actually don't know what's coming next. So, but I think what we've seen in Imo is there's some effort by INEC to ensure that the process is to preserve the sanctity of the process.
So you think the arrest where INEC has said, well, they are making available the officer there and then ensuring that investigation goes through?
I think that to me suggests that they're trying to create a process that is legitimate. So by doing that, I think you can then ascertain what happened, how did this happen, what's the next step from that.
But don't you think that also brings to question the other results that that are being collated so far now? If you have electoral officers engaging in malpractices, having results for areas that didn't have any election, how do we explain this? So once you raise a flag, or there's a level of mistrust, it means that every single action taken, one will always want to question. Don't you think that's right to go?
Well, I think for me, I don't want to say it in this, like in a one-way view. I think you can just look at it like from what you said. I agree with him, all right, and as well as your point is valid. But the truth is this: it raises doubt and question about the sanctity of the whole process. But I don't want to give INEC knock all through. For them to have done that, all right, to say, okay, the police should take this person away because of this person has tampered with the result, is a good move, all right. If not for anything, for the people of Imo State that maybe they have doubt about, okay, can this INEC deliver what the people think or want to believe is a free and fair election? I think it gives hope a little bit, but it raises this question all the same.
But it begs also the question that, is it that there are certain INEC recs that are more resolute to protect, let me use the word, the sanctity of the process, and there are some who are willing to just lean back and let whatever happen? Because there have been, again, going back to several states with results going in different directions and twisted, and you know what I'm talking about. River State. A party that some people don't know the name of the governorship candidate is leading, supposedly leading in that state, which of course is making the PDP cry foul, because before now the PDP thought of itself as, the leading party, being that its major opposition had stepped down. But even at that, do you see INEC ever gaining back that sanctity or gaining back the people's trust? Because the process, it's that lack of trust that somewhat made people not show up for the elections on Saturday.
Well, it's going to take maybe another election cycle for INEC to prove to Nigeria that they are really worthy of the name they bear. What we've seen in Imo State doesn't cut it for me. It doesn't cut it for anybody. All right. It just shows up. It's just one person. All right. We've seen the presidential election. We saw videos of underage kids voting across the northern part of Nigeria. We saw videos, body cams, and the rest of them. And it's sad that some INEC officials are pliant. Like they are in on this. All right. Because at the end of the day, the idea that you are selected for something that's sacred is for you to respect the law and make sure that you are fair in your dealing. So even not just that, even the police officers, we see what's happening. The SACs are being used to intimidate voters. The military officers are being used to intimidate voters in River State. In Kano, we saw the CP Wakili arrested the deputy governor. Even though that was wrong, though, he shouldn't have done that. Yeah, because the deputy governor has an immunity. All right, and a lot of people will say no, that's wrong. You don't do that. All right, he's trying to do good by disrespecting the law, and for me that doesn't sit well. So at the end of the day, it's not just INEC. We talk about the military officers, we talk about the police officers, we talk about the INEC officials and the ad hoc, the people that they brought in, the professors from the universities to work with them. So it seems that the whole system itself is tainted, and it will take another election cycle to cleanse it.
I just want to hear from you. Do you think that there's so much confusion because of elections in 2019? Does this somewhat tell a story of who you really are? Because when you go to the polls, it's supposed to show that the people want to go in a certain direction, but I don't know what the 2019 elections story is telling the world.
That's a question that has me flustered. I think the key theme for me, what it says, is the lack of trust in INEC. And I think it's something that can be repaired. But as he said, it's something that will take one election cycle. Because if you think of the history of INEC too, you think of when we had Professor Iwu. Professor Iwu was regarded as inept at his job. But then that was corrected when you brought in a Jega. So I think it's something...
Is it about the man or is it about the system? Because, you know, let's take, for example, the Buhari comes and says, I want to bring zero tolerance for corruption, and this is my mantra. But you see, Buhari is one person. He needs more people who understand what he's coming to do to make that process work. So even if we have, for example, a Professor Mahmood who probably means good or means well, but there are people who have always been in that establishment, who will always be in that establishment, whether you bring a new person or not. How do you revive this? The whole system. How do you change that, and how do you make sure that it cuts across everybody who's in it?
I think if you look at organizations, I think the culture is largely determined by the leader. So obviously, I think the leader is something that has to filter down. I think one thing that, for me, that I've thought and I think has emerged from this is we need to stop playing with INEC. So, like the president not signing the Electoral Act, the amendment into law before the election, I think what we need to do is, as soon as May 29 comes, you're sworn in for your second term, you have to strengthen the institution, because ultimately we're only as strong as our institutions. When the institutions can fend for themselves, I think we will see a lot of these inadequacies begin to fall away. So I think one of the things we need to do, approve their budget on time, release the budget, let them get to work, give them the strength, give them the ammunition they need to be able to execute their job diligently. So I think that's, for me, is the thing that we need to work on.
But some counter argument has also been that if INEC gets its act right, if even the funds are released a little late and they know what they are doing and the direction they're expected to head to, the moment they have that money's released, they kick into action. So this time around, don't you think that it also calls on INEC to do a strong review and assessment and all of the recommendations that are coming from international and domestic bodies, irrespective of whatever international body has said, well, this was free, fair, credible? We should look at the areas of recommendations and effect changes where need be. This time around, we should still take it that it is the electoral umpire, it is in charge of coordination and a whole lot more, so it has to take responsibility.
Well, I believe that is not that. But for me, I don't think that the leadership of INEC at this moment should be the one that will do it. All right. For me, I feel that the Mahmoud Yakubu-led INEC has failed terribly. All right, postponing an election 3 or 4 hours postponing the presidential 3 hours into election is a failure on his own end.
But moving away from that.
No, we can't move away from that. All right, because the truth is, he's part of it. He failed. He had coppers slept outside for the whole night, and you had money for logistics, and you came to tell us on the election day proper that you are at the airport on the election eve coordinating logistics. So that's a failure on your end. So both him and the logistics officer, INEC logistics officer, all of them, when they are done with this election, I think they've done, and they should just complete the remaining result, announce it for all of us, and we'll say thank you. And let there be a committee of inquiry into the activity to see where they failed, and let some of them be sanctioned. This same election, we had Abia State, Anambra, if I'm right, and Plateau. INEC materials were burned, some of them were compromised. So you can't just tell him thank you. You can't just tell him, thank you, you've done well, sir. No.
Well, a counter argument once again will come up that, well, if you want to do an assessment, doing a comparative analysis with that of Jagas Turner, you should give him an extra term to then be able to consolidate on all of the lessons learned and then give us a better election. But now let's shift away from that and look at the governorship election so far declared inconclusive. We have Sokoto, Bauchi, Plateau, Adamawa, and Benue State. And with all of these, we look at the margins of win and then the number of cancelled votes closely, almost at par. But we know why an election would be termed inconclusive. It's just because, well, the margin of victory is not as much as that of cancelled votes. But the PDP has come out to say, well, in all of these different states, you cannot term it inconclusive because it was clear, irrespective of the figure they see there, it was clear that they were having the lead. What do you make of that PDP stance? Is it just sheer talking politics? Ugo, I want you to answer this.
You on the spot. Okay, that's good. I think PDP is entitled to the opinion. All right. The Constitution allows us to air our opinion, and if they say that's their mind, I think we have to respect them. But for me, I think we should allow INEC conclude their job. If they say that there are reasons to it and they've proven to us, okay, this is why this is inconclusive at this moment, this is why this is inconclusive at this moment, I think it's okay to allow them to complete that job like they did in Osun State. Just hopefully that they will do it well, so it doesn't seem at the end of the day that somebody was rigged out, that somebody was supposed to win.
How do you think things would also play out? Exactly.
I don't disagree, but the point I think the PDP, I don't want it to seem like I'm holding their breath, but if it's a trend, because that was what happened in Osun where they were in the lead and then you declare the elections inconclusive, you do a by-election, and all of a sudden they lose. Like, if it's a trend where in all these states where they're leading, you're declaring elections inconclusive. I understand INEC completing their job, but it's not.
But in Plateau State, for example, now Jeremiah Hussaini, so far from the results, he got pulled in no less than 538,326, while Simon Lalong had 583,255. The margin was 44,929, and council vote 49,377. In this situation, it's clear that APC is leading. So, would you not still floor the PDP in their stance that
that's
they
just one? You just proven one exception. Of the rest, what's the situation with the rest?
Okay, so then how do you also think things would also play out in Sokoto, Bauchi, Plateau, Adamawa, and Benue states?
Well, I think for Sokoto, if you ask me, PDP will still take it because of the Tambua factor. And Bauchi is a little bit dicey. We can't call it, but Dogara is you have Dogara influence in Bauchi. APC is kind of having a divided house at the moment in Bauchi, from the information available to me. So I don't know whether if they will still unite themselves and complete the mission. Because see, what has happened is that Kano, see the information we're getting from Kano, see the information we're getting from Oyo State. All right, so some of these guys that are contesting already know that it's not an easy task. All right, so nothing is guaranteed. It's not like a show me that you eat at the end of the day. So all of them are jittery. So at this point, no one can say anything. But for that of Jos, APC might still get it. The current governor, you see, the power of incumbency and the rest of them. And Jeremiah Hussaini is quite popular. People believe they can be able to manage some of the crisis within that region. Yeah. But because of the age factor, I think he was a military governor 30 years ago. So for me, I think PDP, I don't know why they went to Ghana.
Okay, since we're talking about inconclusive elections, let's just take a listen.
Yeah.
20 PUs affected with a total number of cancellation 26,135. At Pangshin, total number of votes cancelled 1,144. The total now, grand total, 49,377. The difference between the two major parties, the APC and PDP, the APC was leading by 44,929. But when you now when you compare that with the margin of lead, with the total votes cancelled of 49,377, this is far less than that margin. Going by section, in line with the provisions of section 179(2) to 5 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, I'm constrained to say that the election to the governor of Plateau State is inconclusive. At Mangu, we have 3 areas affected, 20 PUs affected, with a total number of cancellation 26,000.
So
no,
that is
from Plateau State.
From Plateau State. From his explanation, is it satisfactory, not enough to declare an election inconclusive?
Well, for me, I think it is satisfactory, despite what PDP thinks at this point. I think I always maintain that no matter what, we should respect the people that have been given authority to conduct or to do anything. It is their constitutional right, all right, to do what they're doing, all right. Maybe at the end of the day, if PDP has issue with how the election was conducted or the turnout of the result, they can go to court and seek redress. But at this point, it's INEC's duty to do what they are doing, and we should respect that.
Why, in just a brief sentence now, how do you think we should also be working towards reducing these high figures that we see running into thousands when we are talking about cancelled or void votes?
Voter education. We need to enlighten people on how to actually go and vote and ensure their votes are valid.
And whose duty is it to do this? Is it just INEC's duty, or is
I think INEC and civil society, civic organizations. So INEC obviously had to raise some form of awareness, and I think it's on civic organizations to, take the fort from there and just...
You forget to mention political parties, because at the end of the day, they are the ones you have to deal with.
Because some of these voters don't know the party logos.
No, some colors look alike and some
we should reduce the party. The 90 is too much. We should.
That's an issue for another day. Well, we want to say thank you to you, Mayowa Idowu. He's a journalist. Of course, Ugo Ikeko is a public affairs analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for speaking with us.
Thank you for having us.
And it's time to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about voter apathy, security, and vote by. Don't go anywhere.